ever heard a story that was just so spooky, so good, that you wanted it to be true? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on some of the most famous ghost stories ever told and find out the surprising and sometimes, honestly, pretty funny truths that have been hiding in the shadows all along.
You know, the great philosopher Homer Simpson really nailed it here. The best hoaxes in history aren't just about a good lie. Nope. They're about an audience that is absolutely ready and willing to listen, and, maybe most importantly, to believe.
So what's the secret sauce? Is it just a grainy old photograph? A really convincing eyewitness? Or is it something a little bit deeper? Something that's actually wired into our own psychology? That's the big question we're digging into today. Okay, before we get to the ghosts themselves, let's talk about our brains. Because it turns out that creepy crawly feeling that you're not alone, that might just be a feature of the human mind, not some kind of bug. This is a totally real thing in psychology. Our brains are hardwired for what's called social detection. It's this ancient instinct constantly scanning our surroundings for other people, for safety and survival. It's super useful, but sometimes that system can get a little bit jumpy. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Think of your emotional state like a volume knob for this feeling. Research shows that when we're in a state of high arousal, like when we're scared or even just really excited, our brain is way more likely to mistake an ambiguous signal for a presence. So the scarier the story you're hearing, the more your own brain is priming you to feel watched. Kind of spooky, right?
So now that we know our brains are basically prepped and ready for a good scare, let's see how this all plays out in the real world. Here are 5 of the most legendary paranormal cases that completely captured the world's imagination, right up until the moment the truth decided to come out.
We're going to start our journey in the dark, murky waters of a Scottish lake, home to a legend that has captivated just about everyone for centuries. And it's all thanks to one very iconic and very misleading photograph.
This picture. You've all seen it. And at the time, it looked so legit. It had all the right ingredients. A respected surgeon as the witness, a clear shot of, well, something. The world went absolutely nuts for Nessie, and tourism in the area just exploded. But fast forward 60 years, and the truth finally bubbles to the surface. It wasn't a monster at all. It was just a model stuck on top of a toy submarine. And the motive? Get this. It was an elaborate revenge plot by a big game hunter who'd been publicly embarrassed by the very same newspaper that printed the photo. Just a perfect example of a story people desperately wanted to be real. Okay, from a lake in Scotland, we're heading to a house in Long Island, New York. Our next case is a story of demonic terror that didn't just spawn a best-selling book, but a massive Hollywood horror franchise.
I mean, the story is absolutely chilling. The Lutz family claimed they were tormented by paranormal forces for 28 straight days. We're talking voices yelling, "Get out!" green slime oozing down the walls, the whole 9 yards. They eventually fled, leaving everything behind, which pretty much sealed the house's terrifying reputation. So what was really going on? Well, according to the lawyer for the original murderer, the entire legend was basically invented over a few bottles of wine. He and the Lutzes just made it up. They turned a casual evening of spooky brainstorming into one of the biggest horror stories of all time. Now let's head across the pond to London for a case that terrified a family, stumped investigators, and later inspired the blockbuster movie The Conjuring 2. Now this case seemed incredibly real at first. It wasn't just the family saying things were happening. Police officers, journalists, paranormal investigators, they all claimed to have witnessed weird events. Everything from flying Legos to a heavy armchair just sliding across the floor. And at the center of it all was young Janet, supposedly possessed by the spirit of an old man. But, well, the truth turned out to be a bit more mischievous than demonic. The girls were eventually caught red-handed. A hidden video camera filmed Janet bending spoons all by herself, and they later admitted that, yeah, at least some of it was just them pranking everyone. That admission cast some serious doubt on the whole story, suggesting it was more about teenage boredom than a restless spirit. All right, next up is what is arguably the most famous ghost photograph ever taken. For decades, this single image was held up as the undeniable drop-the-mic proof of the spirit world. So, for centuries, people had been reporting sightings of the ghost of a woman named Dorothy Walpole at Raynham Hall. Then, in 1936, photographers from a magazine captured this. I mean, wow, it was a total sensation. This ghostly, transparent figure right there on the main staircase. It just seemed too good to be true. And maybe it was too good to be true. Here's the thing. Unlike our other cases, no one ever came forward and said, "We faked it." Experts still argue about technical stuff like double exposure, but the truth? We just don't know. It's a powerful mystery, and it proves that sometimes all it takes is one compelling image to create a legend that never dies.
And that brings us to our #1 paranormal hoax. And this one is a doozy. It's a story that starts with a simple childhood prank, literally, an apple on a string, and somehow it ends up launching a worldwide religious movement.
So in 1848, two young sisters claimed they could talk to a spirit in their house using a series of knocks. It started small, but it spiraled out of control. For 40 years, the Fox sisters were international celebrities. They were the founders of spiritualism, a huge movement that promised people they could talk to their dead loved ones.
And then in 1888, the whole thing came crashing down spectacularly. On a stage, in front of a massive audience, one of the sisters, Maggie Fox, confessed everything. She even showed them how they did it. The spirit rappings were just the sound of them cracking their knuckles and their toe joints. A complete, undeniable hoax from the very start. So, from toy submarines to cracking toes, all of these incredible stories have one big thing in common. People wanted to believe them. And that really raises a fascinating question about why we're so drawn to the unexplained.
The big takeaway here is that a great ghost story is really a collaboration, right? Sure, you need a clever liar, but you also need an audience that's been primed by culture, by their own struggles, and by that deep, deep human desire for there to be something more out there. And even when the truth comes out, like with Amityville, the legend is often just too good to let go of.
So we'll end with this thought. These hoaxes might not tell us a single thing about the spirit world, but boy, they tell us everything about ourselves, about our fears, our hopes, and a profound, unshakable need for a really, really good story. So what do you think?